It's now my pleasure to introduce Ann Molloy, Marketing and Sales Director at Neptune's Harvest.
So yeah, family business. Out of 45 employees, 16 are family. I work with my three brothers, sister, my son, nieces, nephews. It's kind of crazy. If you can go to the next one. So we unload the boats. It's all fresh fish, which isn't smelly at all. So after we sell a lot of it whole, but we fillet a lot and supply the local restaurants here in town, and other suppliers that then fillet it will give us the gurry, we call it gurry, which is the leftover fish remains. That's why our shirts and our koozies say, "Don't worry, it's gurry." So after we take the gurry and we grind it up. It goes into this big machine that looks like a big auger. It goes like this auger, comes out looking like a hamburger, and then it goes into these hydrolyzing tanks, and these really high-powered pumps whip it around. And within 24 hours, the natural enzymes in the fish break it down into a liquid with the pumps whipping it around and the enzymes. And then we stabilize it with just enough phosphoric acid to bring the pH down to 3.5, and that will keep it stable so it has an indefinite shelf life until you add water. And it's still approved by OMRI Organic Materials Review Institute as organic because we're not fortifying and adding extra, we're just using enough to stabilize it. And then it goes through a screening process where it goes through like 150 micron screen. It looks like cloth, it's so fine. And so that way when we sell it to people that put it in a hose end sprayer or big farms that use it, it won't clog sprayers. So it comes out looking like chocolate milk. It doesn't stink like an emulsion, it's not cooked, it's cold processed. Keeps your heat sensitive nutrients intact. The enzyme's still alive in the final product, so the older it gets, the thinner it gets, because those enzymes are still alive, breaking it down. Then you've got your NPK, which is your macronutrients, but it's got micronutrients, trace elements, amino acids, vitamins, enzymes, minerals, growth hormones that are naturally in fish that make fish grow, plus all your omega oils. So it is extremely healthy, and it feeds the biological life in the soil. It creates deeper organic matter, which sequesters carbon. It's just got a ton of benefits. It's good animal feed. It raises the relative feed value and the total digestible nutrients in the food. We sell it to farmers that put it on hay and pasture, and the animals will go graze wherever you put that fish fertilizer down because it raises the bricks. So that's your sugars, so it probably tastes better to them, and it's so nutrient dense. The animals are smart, they know that feed is healthier, and they'll eat half the feed compared to no fertilizer or chemical fertilizer or just manure. Literally, they'll eat half the feed and maintain very high body scores. Extremely healthy, the vets aren't there, they're not on antibiotics, they're calmer. It halves their flight zone, so if you could get 10 feet from a cow before it moves, now you can get 5, it just calms them down. It's just so healthy, and that translates to us too, right? When we eat food that we grow that is very nutrient dense, we're gonna be healthier. And if your soil's healthy, it's gonna drain better, it's gonna retain moisture better, and if farmers are using it, which we have 5,000 gallon tanker trucks that we ship all over, like Montana, all over the place. More farmers that are putting this down compared to synthetic fertilizer, you really could make a big change for the environment with all the, sequestering of the carbon. And you think about all the floods we're having, the farmland with synthetic fertilizer, that dirt becomes like hard packed, like cement. That water just runs, it doesn't absorb into it. So you get a lot more flooding, whereas if you have healthy organic matter, nice deep organic matter in your soil, that's going to drain and retain the moisture in the soil, so you use a lot less water. It's just really like the ideal fertilizer. It's amazing. Let's see, cold process, so that's key. Screened. Yeah, go to the next one. Safe. Obviously, very healthy. You don't have to, spray it on your lawn. You don't have to put the little flags and keep your kids and pets off your lawn because it's healthy.
Baby food.
Yeah, exactly. Next. So we have a lot of different ones, and I think there's a slide on every one. So we'll just go through them one at a time. So we sell all the giant. So this year in Minnesota, this guy grew a pumpkin that was 2,560 pounds. And he drove it all the way to California to get it weighed because it was the biggest prize money at this one weigh off. And he got over $24,000. They paid him per pound.
Nice.
So, and then he carved it into this big eagle. It's an amazing pumpkin. But so we sell to all the giant pumpkin growers, and we have a big following. In fact, their convention, they do a convention every year, and it's in Danvers in March, and they're coming to Neptune's, and we're gonna give them a tour of our two properties and take them for a seafood lunch afterwards. But we sell to all those guys. Next. Yeah, so I was telling you about the nutrient density. Those are hops, and then there's some lettuce over here. When you have a plant full of sugar, high boric content, insects can't digest sugar. So they'll go to a weaker dying plant over a healthy, strong one. It's nature's way of survival of the fittest, kind of. And so you're also going to see a lot less insect damage when you have a very healthy plant. And it really brings out the color and the flowers. Like you won't believe, like they look like they're glowing. I don't know why, but it's amazing the color of the flowers. And we sell to a lot of hop growers and a lot of cannabis growers too, and vegetables. That's Alprilla Farm. It's a cabbage. There's no the beet, and those are that was the Ohio record for the biggest watermelon. So it definitely increases the yield as well. So obviously, it works great for that too. It really helps the aroma, the flavor, the yield. Yeah. So these are just like home growers. These aren't like professional growers by any stretch. Next. So the two dry products we have is a crab and lobster shell. We don't produce either one of these. We get the crab and lobster shell from Canada. Unfortunately, we want to bring that process here to Gloucester. That's our next goal. And the kelp meal is just dried and ground seaweed. We get that from Maine. There's a huge kelp harvest up in Maine. We get it from a couple companies because we sell so much of it that one can't even supply our needs. So we get it from 2 different companies up in Maine. You got a ton of benefits. I think if you we'll go through the slides, there's one on each. This is my brother's lawn here in West Gloucester. So my sister-in-law, this was October, and she had a bag in the shed and she just wanted to get rid of it. So she had a drop spreader, not a broadcast spreader. And I'm pretty sure she came from the Magnolia Pub before she did this. But I'm so glad she did because she did this in October, and this picture was taken in December. You clearly see where it didn't go. So crab is it's very good calcium, great calcium, magnesium. It's high in something called chitin. It's spelled chitin, chitin. And a lot of insects are chitin-based in structure. Ants, grubs, root nematodes, fungus. There's a lot of things that are chitin-based in structure. So if you get the chitin in your soil, it will build chitin-eating bacteria. Once you have chitin-eating bacteria in your soil, these insects are going to get eaten. So it's a passive, organic way to help with a lot of things like grubs on your lawn, ant piles on your lawn, fungus issues. High calcium, great for tomatoes, will prevent blossom end rot, helps with powdery mildew, things like that. It's got a ton of benefits. And it aerates the shell chunks. There's big chunks all the way down to the size of a grain of sand. So it's a natural slow release. So you put it in once a year before you plant, and the big chunks break down all season long, and the small ones are readily available. So really, once per planting is plenty. So it goes a long way, and it aerates your soil, and if you get it nice and deep in the hole before you plant, the roots will reach for those shell chunks as a food source, and it's going to drive your roots really deep. The deeper the roots, the stronger the plant, and the higher the yield it can handle. So it's a great, great product. And people are throwing away millions of pounds of crab shell and lobster shell every year. And so we can utilize it. This is ideal. Right now, the crab and lobster that's not sold live is being shipped to Canada, they cook it up there, they pluck the meat, they freeze the meat, sell it back to the States, they dry and grind the shell and sell it back to the States. So, you know, this is easily something we can do. We also have a crab shell flour, which is like sand, the whole bag looks like sand, and that goes to animal feed people, golf courses, and you know, it's a big commercial market for that too. Next, our hydrolyzed fish, I basically told you all about that. It's 1 ounce per gallon of water, so it goes a long way. Our small bottle there is an 18-ounce bottle that'll make 18 gallons of fertilizer. Once you dilute it, you have to use it right up, but until it's mixed, it'll last forever. 2,4,1 is the NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. But because you're giving it all this other stuff, all the other minerals and vitamins and, you know, nutrients, it compensates for a low NPK. So like a Miracle Grow is a 20-20-20. So if you're raised, you know, on used to using a 20-20-20, you're like, how's a 2,4,1 gonna grow anything? But if you know you're getting a 20-20-20, that's all you're getting is nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. With this, you're giving it so much other stuff, and that'll actually kill your soil. It'll deplete your biological life. It'll kill your microbes. You can have dead soil basically, so your soil is got no nutrition in it at all now, and only thing your plants are going to see is what you give it for chemical fertilizer. With this, you're feeding all that biological life in your soil. Your plants are going to have all that to draw from in their root zone. Go ahead to the next, please. Fish and seaweed blend, 75% fish, 25% seaweed. So we get the seaweed from Maine in a seaweed extract powder. It's a soluble powder. So we take that powder, we mix it with water, and then we stabilize it, and then we add it to the fish. So it's actually very little water because a lot of it, just enough to dilute it and get it solid, you know, into a liquid. And then it goes in with the fish and it's all stabilized together. So that's a really good mix, 75-25, because you're getting a lot more nutrients in your fish, but then you've got the trace minerals and a lot of really good things in seaweed, obviously, too. And then go ahead, that's our straight liquid seaweed. It's a 001, so you can't call it fertilizer. Label registration people will not allow you to call it fertilizer unless it has NPK, so this clearly doesn't. So it's a plant food, but it's, we call it our rescue product. If your plant's going through a lot of stress, you can put the seaweed on and it'll rescue it. I've seen people have plants that are on death's door and they put the seaweed on, it's like happy in no time. It's a great foliar feed. All our liquids are great foliar feeds. It's systemic, so it'll go in through the leaf, down the stems and into your root zone. Fantastic for powdery mildew. This, like, if you have powdery mildew and spray this, it'll wipe it out really quickly. It's a miracle almost. And you always foliar spray early in the morning when the pores of the leaves are open to accept the morning dew. You can also do it at night, but then you're putting your plants to bed wet, you can get fungus and disease. So unless it's a very dry year, I don't recommend it. I always say, you know, crack of dawn, or as soon as you can get out there in the morning, you know, before the sun's on the plants, foliar spray it, and you'll get way more bang for your buck as compared to just root feeding. And everybody, there used to be scientists that said foliar doesn't work. Now they've totally reversed that. I just read an article yesterday in American Rose magazine saying the foliar feed was 85% more absorption of nutrients than the soil feeding. Yeah.
That just depends on the time of the day.
Yeah, so early morning is key, absolutely, because in the heat of the day, the pores on those leaves close to retain moisture in the plant. That's key. Go ahead. So then we have some specialty products. The next 4 slides are going to be tomato and veg, rose and flowering, lawn starter, and turf formula. All of those 4 products have fish, seaweed, molasses, humate, yucca extract, biological microbes, and some added liquid calcium. So extremely high energy mix. The veg is great for vegetables as a sole product, or you can use it in the beginning of the season and get your plant big and bushy, full of vegetation, and then switch to the head of the next one. The rose and flowering, which has a little higher phosphorus, and that'll give you even more blooms. So even vegetables flower, right? And then so any flowering plant, fruit, vegetables, flowers obviously, cannabis, will go into a bud and flower, and then you'll get your fruit, or flower or whatever. So 2-part is great. Or you could just use this year round or just, all season on your flowers, and they're gonna, really respond well. But it's a great 2-part. You can use the veg and then the flowering, and a lot of our growers do that. Next, lawn starter is the same as the turf formula, except it's stabilized with phosphoric acid. The turf formula is stabilized with citric acid, because a lot of communities up and down the coast are coming up with phosphorus bans for lawn because of algae bloom, runoff, things like that. So a lot of communities that have the phosphorus ban, these garden centers, we go to these trade shows and they're like, we need a lawn fertilizer with no phosphorus, it's organic. So we came up with our lawn starter and turf formula. The lawn starter, if you don't have a phosphorus ban, I would say use it, for sure, it's a little bit better because plants do need phosphorus. But, and the little we're putting in here is not running off and causing the problem. It's the heavy, high, 60% numbers that are the ones causing the problem. And chemicals will run right through your soil into your groundwater in no time, where this with the oils, the protein in there is gonna hold it in your soil a lot longer. Next one, that's the turf formula. That's the lawn before and after the turf. It definitely works. We sell this to golf courses all over the country as far as Hawaii. We have PGA courses in Hawaii that buy a lot of this. So it's great. We sold it to Medina in Illinois before they had the Masters there. Oh no, the Riders Cup. I'm sorry, Riders Cup was there a few years ago, maybe 10 years ago now. But yeah, they were having the Riders Cup, and they were like, we want everything to look really good, and they bought a bunch of this. So it's really, really good for grass. It works awesome. Next. So now we also have a liquid crab. So we've developed a process to micronize the crab shell so fine that it'll stay in suspension. So say you already have a plant, like you didn't put it in the soil before you planted, and you want to get that benefit to the crab on there and the calcium. You can use it as a liquid now. It's great for cloning, dipping roots, things like that. It's got a lot of benefits. That's one of the newest products. Next. And Humate, brand new, just came out this year. We've sold it to farmers in bulk for years, 55-gallon drums, 275-gallon totes. But now, younger generation is really into organics. They're learning, they're smart, they know about Humate. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, nobody knew what Humate was in the home garden around. Organic farmers did, but home growers did not. But now, there's a big awakening of people growing really good quality food and weed and whatever, and they love this Humate, and it's a great product. It's like taking the very best of a compost pile and making it into a high-powered liquid concentrate. So it's great for stress. We sell it to the giant pumpkin growers. It's got a ton of benefits. Highly concentrated, a little bit goes a long way. So this is our first year that we're marketing that to garden centers and home growers now. What else? The crab, I pretty much talked about that already. Comes in a 4-pound, a 12-pound, or a 44-pound, and we sell it by the ton. And we have super sacks, 2,200-pound super sacks for the farms. Next, and the kelp meal, full of trace minerals. It doubles in size when it gets wet. The kelp we use is, we call it rockweed around here. It's got the long brown bands and little bubbles you can pop. The technical name is Ascophyllum nodosum. I just say that because it makes me sound fun. Like my one little science word. So yeah, Ascophyllum nodosum. But it's Norwegian kelp, also called that, but we've always grown up calling it rockweed because it grows on the rocks. It's harvested incredibly sustainably. So it is cut, it's not ripped off the rocks. They go along and they cut it. So say this is your coastline in Maine, right? And they start cutting here. And they go harvesting. By the time they get here and come back here, it's regrown again. It grows incredibly fast. So it's so sustainable. And yeah, we should be doing it here. There's a lot more kelp in Maine than we have here, but we still have a lot here.
So you're saying that that's growing from rocks?
Yep, it grows on the rocks. Yep, along the
So that's no
coastline.
line,
What's that?
that's a no line kelp farm then.
Yeah, it's natural.
Yeah,
It's not, raised by anybody,
Yeah.
nature
that's
raises it.
cool, is that?
Yeah, and it's got so much good stuff in it. And we sell this, to farmers for animal feed too.
Yeah,
And the fish get sprayed on feed as well, on liquid fish. If they put 10 gallons per ton of feed, it cuts down on the dust. It's way cheaper than soybean and it's a much better protein.
Yeah.
So it's really good for animal feed also. What else do we have here? I think we're pretty much wrapping it up. Just some other few little pictures, but if you go to our website, NEPTUNE'S or our Facebook page, you'll see pages and pages of testimonies people send us all the time with amazing things
yeah.
that they grow with this stuff. It's really awesome. And we're utilizing 100% of the fish. We're not wasting anything. It's sustainable. It's, now we just have to work on the regulations of our fishermen that are completely corrupt and not fair and don't make any sense. We can talk about that if you have another hour. But don't believe what they tell you. The scientists are the ones that need the observers, not the fishermen. I'll tell you that. What else we got? That's it. That's our warehouse in West Gloucester. Right, like, as the crow flies, it's probably 5 miles from here. So we have the seafood company down on Commercial Street, and then we have a warehouse in the Cape Ann Industrial Park where we bottle it, make the specialty products. Have my office there now, so I don't go home smelling like fish every day, which is awesome. And it's a mile from my house, which I would never have imagined when I bought my house. So that worked out well too. So yeah, that's it. If anyone has questions, I can answer them.
So I have bought your product before and I have a bucket still there from like 3 years ago. How do you make it to stay? Is looks the same?
Yeah, it's the phosphoric acid. It brings the pH down to 3.5, which keeps it stable. And until you add water, it's going to have an indefinite shelf life. If you kept like we have 55-gallon drums that, have been around for 20 or 30 years now, that we just keep just to see, and I don't know what will happen. And every time you check it, it's still fine, but it gets thinner and thinner and thinner because those enzymes are still alive. And hydrolysis process just means taking a solid and making it into a liquid with the use of enzymes. So the natural enzymes in the fish, because we don't cook it, it's still alive, they're continuously breaking that solids down into a liquid. In 100 years, it might look like water, I don't know. But it does, it gets thinner and thinner. I have one farmer, in Indiana, and every time he orders, he's like, I want the oldest stuff you got in the building, because he likes the thinner stuff to run through his tractors, his sprayers. Yeah. So it gets better, like fine wine.
Nice.
Yeah, and we do have the 55-gallon drums, 275-gallon bulk totes, which is a big savings for a farmer, as opposed to buying a 5-gallon pail or smaller.
So for everybody that don't know, we have a bulk order, we get tons of stuff from you guys and other people. So what we do is like we get the biggest thing we can get, and then you can either bring your stuff or refill it in some places, or just they're all members.
I know, but it's illegal to sell fertilizer with a little label, and it's quality control.
It's true stuff.
Okay.
It's true
I
stuff. We usually don't get that.
Yeah.
We always have we this year we're doing the first kickoff for home gardeners,
Nice.
and obviously you have 1 gallon of that and lasts you forever. If you're a home gardener.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's the reason why you're here.
Yeah, thank you. There's our tanker. It's 5,000-gallon tanker truck, and he goes all over the country. He goes to Montana several times a year for the hay and pastures out there. And they spend $6,000 in shipping alone to get our fish to their fields. That's how good it works.
Wow, nice.
Yeah.
So when that is somebody unfamiliar with the space, just where does this fit kind of in the broader fertilizer competition landscape?
There is other people that make fish fertilizer. There's Pacific Grow on the West Coast. There's Organic Gem in New Bedford, and they use only dogfish. And they remove the cartilage from the dogfish and make pharmaceutical products from it, because sharks don't get cancer. interestingly enough. So they use the cartilage from these dogfish, which is a type of shark, and they make pharmaceutical products. The waste after that, they turn into a fertilizer. They're not really into the home garden. They do sell it to home gardeners, but hardly, that's not their focus, is farmers. So that's you know, they sell to a lot of farmers because they can sell it cheaper than we can, because they're using the cartilage for pharmaceutical products, which they get a lot of money for. So they undercut us every chance they can, but that's another story too. But we you know, I don't even care, because if people are using fish on their fields and not chemicals, I'm happy, and we can't supply all the farms in the world, you know, there's only so much gurry, and it takes 10 pounds of gurry to make 1 gallon of fertilizer. So if we grind 5,000 pounds of gurry in a day, we're making 500 gallons of fertilizer. And we have a 5,000 gallon tanker truck. In one shot, that's gone to one customer. So, you know, we have enough supply. We haven't run out in a while. We put in 4 30,000 gallon tanks about 15 years ago, maybe now. And once we did that, we haven't ran out. So we have enough. But the way the fishing regulations are going, it's nerve-wracking.
So it compares like traditional fertilizer, is it super niche or expanding or?
It's expanding. We've got more conventional growers that are used to using synthetic fertilizers calling us now, because the price of synthetic fertilizer is gone through the roof. So when you see the price of gas going up at the gas pump, chemical fertilizer is going up, because guess what? It's petroleum based. They make fertilizer that we're eating food from petroleum. That's where you know, that's chemical fertilizer. It's all comes from petroleum. So very kind of scary. Like, and nutrient density, that's a whole other thing we can talk about. Chemically grown food, you know, from these huge farms that put nothing but high chemicals and pesticides, there's no nutritional value left in this food anymore. That's why people are getting sick. And the organic food is just so much better for you, healthy for you. There's another little thing, guess what, moment. The chemical companies that sell fertilizer, like Bayer, they also make the medicine.
Yeah.
So they're making you sick, then they're selling you the medicine, making you feel better. Not cured yet. Yeah, you mean, you don't wanna be cured, because there's no money in that, but they'll make you feel better. So all these chemical fertilizer companies are also making your medicine.
Yeah.
Not making this up, as you think I would be, because it's hard to believe, but it's true.
So I'm gonna miss this initially, but where do you fish for your own?
So we are a commercial seafood company. Ocean Crest Seafoods is the parent company, and we don't own the boats. The boats are owned by their, you know, fishermen own their own boats, and they go out fishing. We just unload their boats and we sell their fish. We buy their whole catch. And we sell a lot of it whole, and we fillet a lot for all the North Shore restaurants.
So you're like a processing plant for the fish.
Yep.
To buy
Yep,
along
we're a-
with the fertilizer.
Right, we're a wholesale seafood company first and foremost, and then the fertilizer
Oh,
division
okay,
came
got
out
it.
of trying to utilize 100% of the fish and not waste it.
Got it, okay.
So there's boats from, you know, Portland, Maine, and, you know, up and down the coast that unload at our plant. We unload a lot of boats. We buy a lot of boats. I mean, a lot of fish from the fish auction in Gloucester.
Yep.
We buy fish, you know, from other companies too. And we would never have enough gurry to make our product if we counted on what we fillet. So we get a lot from New Bedford and Boston and all the processes in Gloucester, which aren't that many anymore, but thank God for New Bedford. Because if it wasn't for the fish processing in New Bedford, we could not get enough gurry. We get a lot from Boston, but most comes from New Bedford.
Seaweed can be added to cattle feed and reduces methane emission by cattle.
Yep.
Do you know, does that process stay intact when you're liquefying it? Because the big issue is how you actually get the seaweed into the cattle.
So we sell the dry kelp meal to the farmers. It comes in 2,200 pound or 2,000 pound super sacks, or we can sell you the 50-pound bags on a pallet, and they give it free choice. And the cows, they'll eat it when their bodies are depleted in the minerals. They'll eat it, and when they're not, they won't. So free choice is great. You could go broke in the beginning, because they'll eat it and eat it and eat it. But then they'll taper off, and then they'll only take it when they need it. And it takes them a day or 3 or a week even to eat it. Once they get a taste for it, and it's got that salt content too, which you know how they need the salt lick. So it's got that and all those minerals is so good for them. And you're right, it's, they fart less. That's what it is, right? They're not taking less.
Yeah, it's more burping.
Right.
I was hearing that for foliar feeding, especially for calcium, the calcium needs to be chelated. Is that
Chelated, yeah.
Chelated, is that
Yep.
is the phosphoric acid? Is that a chelating agent?
No, the fish is in the form of amino acids, the nitrogen, and it's already chelated. So if you put down a chemical fertilizer, it has to go through a process with the soil before it'll become chelated, where the plant can absorb it. The fish is already naturally chelated. And the crab, it's a good question. I'm not sure about the calcium in the crab. If it's I would imagine because it's from the ocean, natural, it's probably the same as the fish and can be absorbed fairly quickly without having to go through a process to become chelated. But yeah, I think that's one of the reasons you see, like I've had farmers or even home gardeners call up and say, listen, I fertilized this morning, I went to work, I just came home, I swear to God, my plants are bigger and healthier and happier. Like, am I seeing things? Like, no, like one day, like within hours, you're gonna see results. It's amazing. It really does perk things up extremely quickly and really increases that growth. Yeah.
So is the fertilizer aspect of the business, because obviously it spawned from the wholesale commercial fishery business, right? So is it more of a passion project or is it like a legitimate part of the business now? Is it?
It's taken over the fish.
It's taken
Yeah,
over the fish?
because of the government regulations on the fisheries, the boats are only allowed to bring in a fraction of what they could be bringing in. So in the 80s when we got started, the fish bailed us out for 10 years. Like we made no money. It was about $1 million in 10 years perfecting this process. And if we didn't have the fish coming in and paying our bills for the fertilizer division, it would have never got off the ground.
Yeah.
Now it's flipped. The fertilizer division is keeping the fish division alive for the most part because we're selling way more fertilizer than fish, not because it's not out there,
Yeah.
because of the government regulations, which are come from the big oil companies and energy companies that want to take over our ocean and the windmills and other things there.
Where do you, you mentioned bringing lobster and crab shell here locally. What sort of infrastructure are you envisioning to make that happen, or policy changes?
Yeah, so we own the lot next to us, which is all woods, so we could put a crab plant there, that's not a problem, and we could even spend the money to do it. The problem is the energy. You have to use massive amounts of BTUs to heat, dry the crab, it's a lot. So we're talking with the waste management, which is right next to us, about putting in a digester, anaerobic digester or something, and then the energy as the rubbish rots, the garbage rots, it creates a gas, right? We could pump that gas off and heat our crab plant, that would be ideal. That's what we need. We're looking at grants to working with them, or even a compost company generates a ton of heat that we could maybe pipe out somehow. Between that, solar panels to compensate, because you don't want to use a ton of gas or propane to run it. That's really not sustainable, and it's expensive, very expensive, because you need a massive amount. So I think that's where the roadblocks are coming in. But we could definitely do that here. We get calls all the time for big crab companies in Boston, and they're saying, we're throwing all this away and paying big bucks to get rid of it. We would love to give it to you to turn into fertilizer and animal feed. It's great chicken feed too. It's the most digestible form of calcium for chickens. Yeah, it's good.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.